Maybe you could come back on with your phone, Jeff. That had audio on it. I hear you.
You can?
Yeah, awesome, Jeff. Cool. So yeah, just
Okay.
share your screen, and then I guess just have your phone right there, and then we can hear you through your phone. Sorry about
All
that.
right, let's see if I can do this with multiple hands.
Tell the whole team thanks who's waiting and watching.
There's the mic for this. Can you hear me now, Wendy?
Yep, totally.
We're good?
Yeah, I hear a little echo, so you might want to mute. Nope, I don't hear one.
No. All right, just muted that. We should be good.
Awesome, sounds good, Jeff. Off you go. Thank you.
And can you see my screen?
Not yet. Share your screen, and then you're good to go.
This better not suck, huh? For all we're doing.
Do you have any
No.
videos?
No, we're good. No. We should be good.
No videos playing.
Nope, we should be good. No video. Okay. So, Wendy, I'm going to share my screen again. And I want to share the entire screen.
Perfect.
Share, because I'm hoping I can do this. Can you see me now?
Absolutely. Thanks so
Can I
much.
do this?
Boom. We're good to go. Thank you, everyone in the Roseville audience, for letting the world sit in on with you in the audience today. So
I
appreciate
can't
it.
hear you now. I took you off audio.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I think I've got all this right. Okay, I've got a smartwatch, I've got a smartphone, I've got a Chromebook, I've got a MacBook, and I've got an amazing audience here in Roseville. And if all's right in the universe, we should also have an audience globally somewhere. Yes, Wendy?
Woohoo, yes.
Oh, I can hear it from my pocket. That's kind of crazy. I feel like Ratatouille. So if you have it, you're in my front pocket, Wendy. So if you're right here.
Where I should be. Where I should be.
So if you have any hints that you want to give me, please share them, right through that. And ideally, everyone in the audience can see my slide deck. If you go to bit.ly/GAFE, G-A-F-E, WTF in capital letters, it's case sensitive, it should have you all force copy the slide deck, yes? Okay. So everybody should have access to the slide deck. So Wendy, if you want to type that in, it's just bit.ly/lowercase GAFE and then capital WTF. And logistically, I hope we're good. And clearly, as I'm looking at myself here, if they say the camera adds 10 pounds, I must have like 6 on me. That's why I wore black. Come on. Okay, so you are here for WTF. And I hope that you were interested in more than just wondering what the heck is the session doing being called WTF. But for me, it stands for Why Teach Failure. And so I'll give you a little bit of history about what it is I'm doing, but essentially I'm really stoked to have you all here and those of you out and about because I've been teaching for over 20 years, and each and every year I've tried to get better. Each and every day I've tried to get better. And so what I'm going to share with you is sort of the evolution of who I am as a teacher. And it's kind of hard to separate. It's who I am as a man as well, I think, because teaching is not what I do, it's who I am. And so I take it very personal. And I always want to get better and better. And so it's led me down a path to what I believe, and it's not perfected yet, but what I believe is the way that education should be going, that the way of mastery-based learning, the way of, focusing on every child to make sure that she is successful. And so I'm going to share my story on how that's worked for me. And my goal is that you'll be able to take from my lessons, apply them to your community, and together we can collectively transform the way education is done. Does that sound good? And we'll do all of that in 55 minutes. So, this is me, Jeffrey Heil. I came all the way up from San Diego, and it's cold. It was cold this morning. But I thought the one thing that was really good about being so cold, and Wendy, this goes for you as well, that it was so cold, I realized that I can't feel my face when I'm with you. It's not going to get any better than that. So you've got very few options for laughter here. But I wear many hats. But ironically, I'm not actually wearing a hat as we speak. I'm a Google Certified Innovator, Google Certified Trainer, which is sort of what got me connected with my favorite current position, which is traveling with EdTechTeam, talking to amazing educators like you all. That we're here on the weekends. I mean, this fuels my soul, and those of you out in the audience, it fuels my soul to be with educators that are like here on their own time to get geeky. And so it's not at all work to me. It's just passion. It's sharing of passions. You sharing yours, me sharing mine with you. But my primary job for the last 20 years has been working for the San Diego County Office of Education. I became a teacher because I used to live across the street from a homeless shelter, and I was wondering what was going on over there, and I walked over there and I said, "Why are you locking these kids in this building?" And the man said, "We're not locking these kids in the building. They're actually, this is a shelter." I said, well, what do I have to do to work here? And I became a teacher so I could work at that shelter. So for 20 years, I've worked with the juvenile court and community schools. I worked with homeless, kids who are homeless, kids who are incarcerated. And right now, I'm the erstwhile tech director for the juvenile court and community schools. And I've been going one-to-one Chromebooks. I have Chromebooks in my juvenile detention facilities because they don't have access to it the same way everyone else does. I've got these devices in. We have more devices than kids. So I'm really, really proud of that fact. I also, 10 years ago, was sent to Cal State San Marcos as what they call a distinguished teacher in residence. So I got to go play professor full-time for 2 years, and then I went back to the county office. But I've continued to teach at Cal State San Marcos, and my primary area of focus is technology with the single subject educators. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today is the way in which I torture them. And how it could look a little bit differently. So that's pretty much who I am. And I like to share this with you before I start these kind of conversations. This book, Walk Out, Walk On, is written by Margaret Wheatley and Deborah Fries. And why I think it's interesting and relevant to education, essentially these two women and their organization went out to 8 impoverished countries in the world. And they worked collectively, collaboratively with the communities to help them solve their own social issues. And so as such, they came up with this term that they called translocalism. And translocalism sits in opposition to transglobalism, meaning that if something is transglobal, the issue or the situation is analyzed from afar, solved, and then somebody's handed a blueprint. Hey, I've analyzed your problem, you're not smart enough to solve it, I've solved it for you, just follow this blueprint, here you go. Sound a little bit like Common Core, right? So the idea is that we often get things handed to us. What they did, the idea of translocal means that I come to you with a concept or an idea, something that works for me, and then what your job is to analyze, you know your kids, you know your community, you know who it is that you need to work with, and so ideally you then work with your community to solve your own issues. So I love the idea of something that is trans-local versus trans-global. And I think that really applies to us as educators, because no one knows our kids like we do. No one knows our kids' situations like we do educationally. And so we should be the ones working together to solve the problem. And so that's how we got here. And a couple other things that I'd like to talk about. Two of my favorite things, statements that I've heard said out there are all kids can learn. Does anybody not believe that all kids can learn? I think we all collectively agree with that. But what I think we fail to do is, okay, but what do you do when they don't? That's the missing piece. All kids can learn, yes. But what do you do when they don't? And so it's part of what I'm going to talk about today helps address that issue. And my other issue, too, is the idea of failing or failing forward has become really popular these days. But the same thing. Failing is good as long as we're failing forward, as long as we have a plan in place for what happens when they fail. Failure is part of the learning process, but are you building that into your curriculum? Are we giving opportunities for people to do just that, to fail forward? Do we have things in place, or are kids being punished for failing? You know, we're not necessarily celebrating the failure, we're celebrating the learning, and I don't think we always do the best job of articulating that. So those are the two things that I think we need to wrap our minds around. And so a lot of what I talk about is based on the ideas of the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. So I would love for you, both here and out in the audience if you want, for those of you that are following along with the slide deck, if you click on that where it says test your mindset, a Google form is going to pop up. And for those of you at home, if you want to get the short link, I did it as a bit.ly/WTF mindset, all lowercase.
So hopefully you're able to access it. You all have access to it?
So here's what it is. It's a Google form that's going to ask you what your mindset is. Well, maybe you don't know what your mindset is, so I have a link at the top of that Google form. If you click that, in a perfect world, a new window is going to open up. Could be a metaphor. A new window is going to open up, and it should be a series of like 12 questions from Carol Dweck's website. So feel free to take a couple minutes, those of you at home as well, and take their little quiz and find out what your mindset is. It's going to be one of three things. It's going to be growth, it's going to be fixed, or it's going to be neither. You could be equally balanced.
So once you finish and get your
Mindset given to you, go back to the left, the tab immediately on your left, which has that form, and just enter your information.
That make sense?
Yes. It's not working? If you click here, a little link should pop up underneath.
Oh, don't click the video one. That was just for the
People at home.
maybe you in here. I want you to click on the test your
Mindset, and then a link should pop up underneath.
You missed my.
Oh, the actual, it's bit.ly/lowercase GAFE, and then capital WTF. That should take you to the slide deck. Is everybody able to access, most of you able to access it? Okay.
So I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to pull this up. And I'm going to go to edit the form. Here.
And then I should start to see your responses come.
This is the point of the
Dancing on the stage, so feel free to look away. But I'll give you a second to look that over.
Wendy, how are things online? Good?
Going good here.
All right.
If you're watching online, everyone, please join us on the Backchannel, todaysmeet.com/EdTechTeam. And you can sign in to win a cardboard at the end, bit.ly/EdTechTeam sign in. Hopefully you're taking along and taking the mindset quiz right now as well. And let us know how it's going in the Backchannel.
Can my Roseville people join the Backchannel?
Didn't answer. All right. I think it was todaysmeet.com/EdTechTeam.
All right, so we're getting our responses. They're rolling
in. And I think for the most part, you probably knew where you were. If you've been, how many of you are familiar with the growth and fixed mindset idea, right? Okay, good. How many of you have taken a little survey seeing where you were? So good, a couple of you, great. All right, so how many of you read Carol Dweck's book? A couple of you. So I would recommend, I will tell you while we're finishing up here, when I read it, and when I say read it, I mean through Audible, I think we need a new verb, right? I mean, I almost all my books are audiobooks. But what it really transformed the way I thought, not only about myself as an educator, but if you're not familiar with the entire book, if it really interests you as an educator, I would recommend that you read it, because she really attacks, it hit me as a father, as a husband, as a friend, how our mindset affects, all aspects of our lives. So her book was very interesting in that way. So we're up to like 26, so you can keep filling it out. But what if I were to ask you all to guess right now, what do you think the majority of our people are in the audience?
growth or fixed. Right. Okay, you're probably right. And I'm going to check that right now. So we're up to
32 and going. I'm going to just do a quick summary of responses. And of our 33 that I have recorded,
32 growth and 1 fix.
very common. I was just looking, I've been doing this for about a year now. Actually, I will say Roseville is my 1-year anniversary of doing a lot of work with EdTechTeam. You were my first summit as a featured speaker last year. So I started this like in June, because I was trying to change things up. And I looked at my data yesterday of the 300 and something responses that I've collected. It's about 96% growth. And then not necessarily 4% fixed. It's either fixed or a combination of two. So why am I asking you this? Why are we taking that survey? It goes down to the bottom. Do we believe that a student's mindset can affect their learning? And I think most of us think yes. Yes, it can.
And so, if we are...
Then here's the rub. Session that's talking about mastery-based learning, that's talking about honoring the growth mindset, yet we all teach in systems that and so why aren't we changing that? When the majority of us, at least those of us in this room right now, truly believe that, intelligence is something that can be grown, that mistakes are part of the learning process, why are we continuing to penalize kids for failing?
And I need more in terms of this.
You see what I'm saying? And so that's why I like to give that little quiz, and that's why, again, this is so fun for me, because it's just a conversation with like-minded people for the most part. And so if that's what we believe, and this is a fairly new slide for me, I just added this, I thought this was really interesting,
Because if we're looking at, what would be that
that normal bell curve of aptitude, right? This top piece, and then we look at achievement. Well, if we truly believe this, then this is no shock, right? Then this is no shock. That if this is the way a collective aptitude is, then this is what we should see for achievement. And that fits pretty much along the lines of the fixed mindset. However, for those of us in this room, let's just say, for argument's sake, that that is true. It doesn't mean that this can't also be true. And so that's why we're here. Because we want to really think about how can we change the way what's in the middle here? What stands between these two?
us, teachers, working with kids. And so we have a profound
Impact on this, whether it looks like this or whether it looks like this. And all of us agree that we believe in this.
So this is the result.
That make sense? So there was sort of your philosophical setup. So now let's talk about perhaps how it is we're going to do that.
And so my journey was,
Along the lines of, I truly believe in learning over grades.
and I believed in a growth mindset before I even
Knew it was called a growth mindset. Been teaching for over 20 years. And so I knew that I wanted to do things differently. And then I became a college professor. And then I realized I could do things differently. And so what I started doing was giving my students the criteria that they needed to do for the course, and then saying, I'm not really about hard due dates. I would tell them, I'm not going to grade you, but if you do what I ask you to do, you can grade yourself. And so understand that in the background, my belief was that I want you all to achieve mastery. So if you do what I ask you to do, which is achieve mastery for the task that I have set for you, then you can grade yourself. And if you don't get it right the first time, you can resubmit it, and you'll be reevaluated again free of cost in terms of grade. So
I give them now a criteria sheet that has what I expect for their math.
And then their job throughout the semester is to achieve mastery. They have peers that are giving, I'm going to show you the process, but they have peers that give them feedback along the line, and then the goal is that they're going to achieve mastery. And this quote from Parker Palmer's The Courage to Teach, if you're ever feeling beat down as an educator, read this book. It's awesome. But I loved this quote, and this sits on top of what would be essentially my rubrics, and we're going to get to why my rubrics look a little bit differently. But essentially this, when I give a final grade, it's not an average, but the grade given for the last revision. In this way, I hope to show students that the intent of evaluation is to offer guidelines for learning rather than terminal judgments. Because when you think about how we learn everything else in our life, that's how it works. I love to snowboard. I took my daughter snowboarding.
Never gave him a grade. Oh, Zoe, you failed
Today.
Trying to get you to do the S-turn, Zoe.
Gave it your best shot, but you didn't make it. I'm sorry, but you won't be going snowboarding tomorrow. Right? We don't do that.
Almost all of our learning is by that failing.
Forward. Right? When we're truly passionate about something, we're not afraid to fail. So how can we
change the way we're doing education if we start to
replicate that? Well, here's one of my thoughts, and this isn't a novel thought from me in any way. Why are we giving kids the opportunity to suck? Because that's what a 3-column rubric does. Because essentially the way this rubric goes is it's like, you're awesome,
meh, and you suck.
Why give them the option to suck? Because sadly, many of the kids will take you up on that opportunity. And it's always annoying to me, like if I, and it's the rubric in general, and it's the general, I'm not saying rubrics can't be better constructed, but in general, this is how you construct a rubric. This is what you want to see, right? And then you start taking crap away. Well, if you only do these, then it's this column, and then you take more crap away.
Well, then you'll be here. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't get rid of these two.
This is what we want. And I'm not saying that you're not going
to have kids that are going to fall short of this. But don't give this to them. This is what you're working on. This is what you're working towards. And the only thing that's going to keep you from achieving mastery is time.
So if the semester ends, the quarter ends, obviously.
Because of the system we're in, we have to give a grade of some sort.
So that time should be the only thing that can limit that
kid from reaching mastery. And even then,
we can still do things to try to get them
towards mastery.
And so the first thing I do is I get rid of those
2 columns,
and they get something for me that looks like,
backward, that looks like this.
It's the 1 column mastery. This is what I
expect them to do, and they've got guidelines on how it's done. And then they've got an area here where they can give me some comments, and they've got the criteria over here. This is what they get from me.
1 column. And they give their peers. And so
as we're thinking about, in the name of translocalism, I'm not saying you have to change your entire course. Could we do this with a unit? Could we do this with an assignment? Could we do this with, you know what I'm saying? So whatever you can do.
Experiment with it. Try mastery-based learning.
I will tell you, as a teacher, you work a little bit harder. When you decide that not only do you believe that all kids can learn, but you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure they do, guess what? It takes a little bit more work. But the payoff is worth every because the look on their faces when they can actually realize they can be successful. Instead of going, well,
I'm okay with men.
My ambition is that of a movie extra. I don't really want a talking part. I'll be okay with men.
Well, that's not okay with me. It's okay with me that if you busted your ass all
semester long and you don't make it, I'm not going to fail you. I'm going to honor what you've done. But you know what I mean? Our goal is mastery. So how do we make that look? And then one of the things that I realized
that's who I am. But I will tell you that having done this now
for the last probably 7 years, I now wholeheartedly believe in the type A personality. And when you don't give a type A any type of grade
for 16 weeks, they start taking medication about week 5.
And so I had to figure, and I had to evaluate, these are real people with real issues, as we all are, right? But, and I'm kidding, but the idea was that, okay, what can I do then, instead of making it all do at you've got pretty much all semester long to revise and get credit, what can I do? And then I came up with the idea, I didn't come up with it, but I came up with the idea of applying badges. So for me now, it's a 3-unit class. So again, translocalism, what could this look like in your classroom? For me, it's a 3-unit class. So I took a unit's worth of work for each and made it 3 badges.
And so You work toward.
And so the first badge is due in like 3 or 4 weeks, the second badge is due 3 or 4 weeks later, and then the last badge is due at the end.
And in that way, if you've earned the badge,
You've achieved mastery. So for the type A, if you've earned that badge, you have an A.
and so how could you leverage
Whatever it would be, badges or some other system that could allow these kids to, and the other thing is, for me, nothing's optional. You can't choose to not do the work, or you can't earn the badge. And you have to earn the first badge to get the second badge, and you have to earn the first 2 badges to get the third badge. So you cannot opt out.
I don't believe in extra credit, but I do believe in extra learning.
Right? I mean, because if I set my criteria for what I wanted for mastery, how am I giving extra credit to supplement that? If I want to do that, I can just give you the option of either that project or that project, which I'm trying to do as well. I'm trying to change that. So you know what I'm saying? So I believe in extra learning, though. What if, and I think about this for my K-12 people, what if I gave options along the way for extra learning to earn other badges? We all love badges. Give me stickers, give me badges, whatever it is. It's kind of a cool, I think I'm a big football nut, right? And what do you see on all the college football players' helmets? Badges. They don't call them that, but that's what they are. And they work hard to get them because it's, you know, and so there's not a winner and a loser in that case. I like badging because there's no winner or loser. I'm a huge fan of competition on the athletic field. The competition in the classroom should only be against the person you were yesterday, not against the person next to you. And so the badges was a newer concept about 2 years ago. So I added the badges, and so here's the way this works. They get a Google form from me, and you can look at some of the examples if you want. There's some actual examples of students that have given me permission. They get a Google form that has a link to that Google Doc that is the criteria.
And so it's nice and clean, and here's what's clean
About it. I don't use a learning management system. And so when they click on that, they make a copy of the criteria sheet, they find a peer editor, and then when the criteria sheet's ready for me to evaluate, they fill out the form. And that form includes who's your peer reviewer, a link to your website. I break them down into houses too. If I have a class of 30 students, I like to break them down into groups of like 5 and say, you're responsible to give feedback to everyone in your house. It makes it easier than saying, you need to give feedback to some of your 30 peers.
It's a lot more manageable for them. Oh, okay, I only have to do
These other 4 people.
I can do it. So one of the things we do is
A 20% project, which I'll talk about tomorrow. One of the things we do is a 20% project, and so that's even better, because then they can really give their peer feedback, you know, throughout the whole process.
But then they submit this to me, and what happens to all the
Information that goes into the form, it dumps right into a
spreadsheet? So now I've got the built-in
place. Instead of me having to go to their work just came to me. So if you're using Google Classroom, if you're using an LMS, obviously they can submit that way as well. So for me,
they get the criteria sheet, and the beauty of Google Docs is that I love me some of the comment.
the comment feature allows for this threaded discussion with their peer reviewer and with me. So they are responsible to give their peers feedback
before it even reaches me. And
So let me go to the live example here.
when we're going to the Google Doc,
I love technology. What you have to say when the internet gets a little slow, right? I love technology. And so you can see the actual sheet. For those of you who actually give a sheet, that's like 4 jokes. I mean, 5 is my limit.
so you can see that this is the
I think this is the middle badge. It's hanging out, messing around, and geeking out. And it's based on, I gave you a link to Ita's research on kids learning and using social media and stuff, and she said that's how it worked. Kids go through a process of hanging out, messing around, and then geeking out. So I kind of named the badges that way. But anyway, so as you can see here, they have to give me links to their work that I go in and evaluate. But if I click on the comment feature here, they see my feedback. And if they had their peer on here, they would see all of their peers' feedback as well. And so even if my daughter played 1/4 of her water polo game today, on varsity. She's a JV player, so that's pretty cool. But the idea here is that you can use Google Docs to give and to have a history of the feedback. I love that. And so they can resolve something that they think has been created, and I can go back in and go, yeah, I'm going to reopen that because you didn't quite do that. And so for me, and the other good thing about Google Forms is, this is what it looks like. They submit the information in the form, it dumps into a spreadsheet, and now I've got a spreadsheet. And now the spreadsheet can be manipulated by me. So I can go in and add a badger column, their first name column, the comments that I might have feedback. And what you see here is when they had their first review, when they had their second review, their third, and their fourth. So they get multiple opportunities to earn that. And I promise you, it's always interesting to me that some people think, well, if you don't give grades, how do you separate out the good from the bad? And if you don't give grades, you're not challenging the kids enough. And I promise you that whoever this is felt challenged. Could he or she that had to do this multiple times? I get frustration from these, and I will say that as this particular group, I just finished working with. You can see the dates in November, and I really, really wish I knew as much as my credential students about education, because they really know all there is to know about education. How you lose that as you get older, I don't understand, but it's this weird phenomenon. But and so this group you don't see all of them. This group of about 47 people, 46 of them reach mastery.
46 reach mastery, and I think
it only cost me one ulcer. But I said to them, so I had them for 1 unit's worth in the fall, and then it carried over. I just starting to work with them in the spring. I thought I really wanted to be able to work with them all year long instead of just making it a course. And I said to them
last week when I met with them,
I said, okay, so now you're in your second semester of student teaching, and I'll ask any of you right now, of any lesson that you do, any unit that you give,
how many of you read 98% mastery of the entire? Not very many.
And so what I would say to you is, it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort. When I can see like 4 or 5 of these kids that if I had been using a traditional scale would not be teachers. And my hope is that by modeling this for them and showing them that I believe in a growth mindset, that if we as teachers change our approach, we'll see a lot more success in our kids. And so that's what I would say to you.
Is that how many of the things that you're doing
result in 98% mastery?
And not very much. So it's worth the effort.
I can see tangible results. Some of them get mad, and when I switched to doing this, my reviews went a little bit lower because some people don't want to do it. They hate the fact that they have to fix something. And the other thing is, I can maintain high expectations, really high expectations, when you can fix it penalty-free. And so I really challenge them. I really push them. And it really frustrates about 10%. And as that's frustrating for me, and I'm sure it would be for you too, whenever you get that feedback, like, this sucks, I don't like this. But then I step back and go, okay, if I were doing the traditional model of teaching the way I did 15 years ago, guess what? Probably more than 10% of the kids would still hate it. And then I would not like myself, because I would know there was a better way to do it. So we have to, that's my sort of caveat to you. Like, if you really jumped into this, it's interesting that what you see is probably 10% of the group just doesn't like it.
But what we can do is work with them. What don't you like?
And especially if you're seeing them over a year-long period of time, how can I work with you to change maybe the focus of what you're doing? So
there's ways in which we can do that. So
this is kind of the whole process.
This is what it looks like. This is another group.
To give you, again, this was even a more challenging group. Because again, and they didn't find it very funny that they were evaluated on March 14th, and that's what they got. But but the idea here is that they don't all necessarily reach mastery. And so I try to put things in my column in my own self, like, and again, I can be super picky. Like, if you just left one thing out and I made you redo it, and then the semester ends I'm going to give you the majority of the credit, but I just need you to not stop. And I did have one kid, the 47th of that last group, was just a man that had his PhD, and he knew more than all of us combined, and he refused to revive. So I can't say. I gave him every opportunity in multiple emails. He chose not to. And so that's the way we do it. That's what it looks like. We send this out. They give peer feedback. Now you have a couple different options. And again, what I'm curious, Wendy, both for everybody at home, hopefully, what can this look like for you? Obviously, you're not teaching. All of you might not be teaching, 3-unit college courses and I bet you would love to have just 30 or 50 kids. I get all of that, right? We all have different situations. But what could it look like for you? What could it look like? Is this something that we could commit to a unit, something that we could commit to for a class, try it as a class. That's what I want you to think about. What could this look like in your situation, and who would you have to talk, who would be the biggest obstacle? You pretty much know who the biggest obstacle is. I can tell you. Not the kids. Not administration. What are we left with? Our parents. Your parents. And so you really have to front load this conversation with parents. And if you do that well, it's like, here's my goal for your kid. I believe in your kid. I want your kid to be successful. And so I would love for you to help me in that journey. So, and again, one of the other obstacles are going to be the system. I have to give really great. I have to give progress reports. I get that too. So you have to figure out what that can look like. Which ones are permanent, which ones are just, for the parents or for markers of progress. What could that look like? What does that look like for you? So I want you to sort of think about that. And if you look, I wanted you to, if you want, click on that PLN folder. And so I took the 3-unit course, which is, I think it's technically called Secondary Education in the 21st Century, which is a bit ironic that we're dealing with the 21st century when we're like 17 years into it. But I've got I want to give you an example of some of the things that they do, and some of the things that I've learned. And if any of you are elementary teachers, you know this way better than I, how specific you have to be in some of your instructions. Did I tell you that I love technology? Excellent. So in this, again, and I share this with you for a couple reasons. You can get a feel for the way that I've run it. You can have access to my documents. If this at all sounds like something you might be able to do, you can come back and look at these forms, sort of get a feel for what it's doing, how it could work. And again, knowing that I'm working with adults, you're probably working in a K-12, but I promise you in every area. And one of the other things that I will say is, I get these students after what? 12 years? 13 years of education in the system that says, don't make me think. Just copy what I've given you and you'll be okay. So it makes sense. I don't even necessarily, that 10% I said that struggled, I think they largely struggle because they were so used to the system. And I think sometimes as teachers, we teach the way that we were taught, and so we were successful in that system. There's something about each and every one of us in this room that thrived in that system. And so how and why should I change that? You know what I'm saying? So that's the other piece of that. But here's some examples. I have them read, and everything I do for them, my other, to whatever extent that you could, default to open. Always, always, always default to open. Meaning, if you have any opportunity at all to have kids producing work for a global audience, take it. If you have, even if, and I say this in all of your lesson design, I say this in all of the units that you think about, if I'm creating content that even if I don't actually do it, I'm creating it as if it's going to a global audience, you're going to get better work from the kids. So even if I'm an elementary teacher and I can't necessarily publish my website outside of my domain,
I can publish it inside of my domain.
and the kids get the same experience, and they can give each other feedback online, even if only they and their peers see it. You see what I'm saying? So always, always default to open. Not only does that, and I have another one on lesson design that I talk about that as well, is that if we start doing that, and when you think about smart design for your lessons, and when you think about using technology to transform learning, not just using technology to enhance learning.
If you think global, I always say,
One of my session titles is called Think Global at Google.
that, you know, all the tools that Google
Provides us, blogs and websites, and even something as silly as publishing. We can take Google Slides and we can publish them to the web. They can become a little website. They could be interactive if I link to different slides. So we have all of the tools in our virtual toolbox that allows us to do that. So what can I do with the work that I have that can push the kids towards the mastery and that can get them producing work for a global audience? So that's one of the things that I want you to think about.
And another option is
I created my own badges.
you can use something like class badges, or
Many of your LMSs already have built-in badges. So why not tap into some of that existing idea? So class badges was created by one of our EdTech teamers, James Sanders, and he sold it. But it's a great, I really like this for elementary. I tried it, and for just 3 badges, it became a little cumbersome. And when I was working primarily with kids virtually,
it became more, if I was with kids every day, I think I
could use more and more. So think about the idea that if you like the idea of rewarding the mastery-based learning with the badge, that's the A. Earning the badge is the A, right? And so however you would want to deal. So I can create, instead of thinking about my system that is like 3 badges over the course of a semester, how can you create these opportunities for kids to either, you can also weight the badges.
like you can, if you write whatever it would be, like
If you wrote an essay and then created a podcast, that earns whatever badge that's worth 4 badging points. Or if you just drew a reaction to something, that could be worth 3 badging. You know what I'm saying? There's so many ways in which we could creatively sort of gamify the way that we're doing this, all in the name of
mastery-based learning, and all in the name of a fixed mindset. And if I can get the
kids to focus on the learning and not so much on the grade, because when I get so many students, here's how they do it. They analyze the syllabus, and they go, okay, let's see here.
Okay, that choice reading is worth
10%. I don't want to do that. So essentially, if I take out that choice reading, then I'm working with 90%. Well, there's that 5% of me having to come to class every day. Don't think I'm going to make that. And they literally figure out what exactly they have to do to get the passing grade that they want. And so some things are just eliminated in their mind. And so this kind of system doesn't allow that to happen. When you say to them, we're focusing on learning in this class, we're working towards your mastery for math, for
social studies, or science, or history,
whatever it is. When we do that,
it's like, what do I have to do to take
grades off the table? What can we do? What can you do? I guess that's the big question, right?
And so that's essentially
the idea of the mastery-based learning. One of the things that I will say that I do like and learned about rubrics, I like them more as guidelines. This rubric wasn't designed to give someone a grade. And I found it interesting, at the college level I was told I have a PLN assignment, where the kids are trying to connect to other educators through Twitter, through other means. And I was told by the university, you need to come up with a PLN rubric.
So
the idea is, the other thing that frustrates me is if I tell the kids, so if they're using Twitter, what's the first thing the kid's going to ask? Exactly how many tweets do I have to do to get an A? And if I say 47, that one kid is going to do 47 in 10 minutes and say, boom, that's an A. Right? So to me, it's a little disingenuous to do that. But the irony is, so I started to create this, and I sent it out on Twitter. And I created it in the only way that I knew how to make rubrics, which is you're awesome, meh, and you suck. Right? So I created it, and I just threw it out on Twitter.
And I said, here's my PLN rubric. Any feedback? And then some woman by the
Name of the data diva. And I'm not kidding you.
got a hold of it, and she said, you're doing it all wrong.
And I said, help me, data diva.
And but she did.
For like 2.5 hours, this woman and I virtually, I don't even know where she lives or necessarily what she does, but she said, what you need to do
Is in this first column.
you need to put the skills that they actually have, and then you put the target skills here, and then you put, obviously this is the middle ground. And so I worked with her, reworked it, so instead of it being,
reads web content daily to include
blogs, articles, and others, and then says, reads web content sometimes, and then says, never reads, right?
that becomes reads web content
Daily to include blogs, articles, etc. This becomes reads web content sporadically to include blogs, and this says reads newspapers and magazines recommended by friends. I thought, I'd love to take credit for that, but she was awesome. So I like that as a guideline. That's sort of what it could look like.
And so I'm not attacking unnecessary
Values to it, but saying this is where you are and this is where I would like you to be. And the grand irony is, so this finishes out, and obviously it had been shared through Twitter, and then the Chronicle of Higher Ed contacted me and said, could we publish your rubric in our magazine?
Yeah, how many points do
So the idea here now, we get to the point, and it'll be interesting for those of you at home, Wendy, maybe you can help facilitate this on the back channel, is I would really like you to take a minute
to talk to the people around you. Where are my elementary?
elementary people here in the room. Look around and see your elementary peeps. So I would love for you guys to get near each other. Middle school? Not a lot of middles, so you in the back should come up front with my middles. And my high schoolers? Most of you are high school. Okay, so you're pretty close to each other. So take a couple minutes and talk about what this could look like in your class, in your school, in your situation. I really want to hear your feedback. I have a brainstorm document here where I've had maybe more time. If you click on that, you don't have to fill it out, but you could use it as a guideline or something to research, where I broke it off into middle, elementary, and high school, and basically said, what do you think? What would the challenges be? What are your ideas? So just take a few minutes, and Wendy, for those at home, if they could just throw it in the back channel, what could you do? Or what do you do? Share with each other. So can we do that? I'll put on a little song, and we will take like 4 minutes to do that. Let's go. Wendy, how's it going at home? They doing okay?
Yeah, we're good, Jeff.
Okay.
So you're my co-facilitator. I'm going to have to start calling you Ratatouille.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. All right, we are going to listen to a song. I guess. And Wendy, this is the exciting part for those at home. I just love seeing educators talking about this.
Totally.
I'll let you see them.
You're doing the music back? Okay. Freaked me out for a minute.
I don't know if there's other coaches around, but the teachers are incredibly
Yeah.
And I used to work for it, so we're like updating each other. Yeah, this is creating a lot of work for me right now because I'm revolutionizing how I teach yearbook.
And the same concept could apply to coaching, like working with teachers. Teachers, we could revolutionize PD. Right?
We do our PD in the classroom. We do it for mastery, like, oh, you didn't do it all, well, let me know when you're done, and I'll submit your test mark.
Absolutely, right on. So Wendy, I'm walking around talking to people.
Awesome. Cool. We're sharing in the back channel.
Okay.
Padlet, so you see what the ideas come in. And if you're at home, folks, you can just go to that padlet.com address and share how it would look in your classroom. And if you haven't yet, you can go to our today's meet and also make sure you sign in because we're going to give out a cardboard at the end.
What do you think, Gabby? So we have a lot of similarities. I have lots of resources if it's something, yeah. Adults work really well with that model. Okay. Thank you for the music. So hopefully you had some fairly rich conversations, and it was, as I was walking around, I've got some coaches up here, and one of the things that I failed to mention is that we can use the same idea to transform PD. So PD can and should be done differently as well. So why are we not modeling that? And again, that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love working with adults. Right? When I can get my adults to participate in new learning, when I can get them to you know, or in a class situation, force them to do something differently, that hopefully will have an effect on the kids that they teach. And so anybody want to share what ideas came out? What are you already doing? What are you thinking? Did this inspire anything for you? I would love to hear a thought or two. Anyone? You can't just look at me because I'll tell another joke.
Okay, start here and then go back.
Saying that we're going to do away with grace, but they haven't mentioned anything about what we would do instead of grace. So this is the first thing I've heard, and I'm glad to hear it.
Awesome. What grades?
Elementary.
Elementary. Awesome. Well, we could easily do it in elementary. There's not the other added pressures of colleges and things like that at that level if we're working towards mastery. And standards-based grading goes a long way towards that. So we could really latch onto that as well and build on that. So in the back? To scaffold. Yeah, my advice. And so, Wendy, for those at home, the question was, if we're going to try this model, and you're traditionally working with a group of kids who are unmotivated, you know, how does this, what could it look like? And my answer to that would be,
shorten the intervals between, you know, mine
way long. I would do this over a week. I would do this over a day. And I would also scaffold it. So when we're trying to tap into kids' voice, choice, and agency in, you know, all ways that we can.
They're not all ready because they've
grown for how long? Having no voice, no choice, and no agency. And so for some kids, they take off with that new opportunity, and some kids, they flounder. And so both, and I'll talk about it on the 20% project as well, in both cases, what I have learned is that I need scaffolds in place. I need like 3 levels. The person that's ready to run with this, the person that's unsure, and the person that's scared to death and needs some support. And so definitely smaller intervals and create opportunities for success early in authentic ways. Not everyone gets a trophy kind of way. In authentic ways that can tap into that. And once they start experiencing success, it builds on itself. And have options, right? If you're saying you have choice to do that, maybe limit their choices. You know, I think
Dan's sitting in the back. It's like I always tell people
sometimes too, Google's huge. Don't tell a kid go to the internet and just research. Right? It's often better to scaffold that for them. You know, limit them a little bit until they gain the skills, like the search guru in the back of the room has there, to be able to Google anything. We're not all there. Most of us adults are not all there. So you want to create those opportunities. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and again, that's sort of working in a system that we can't change 100%. And so you can build in your mastery-based rubric, the 1 column, in your head, think about it. If this is 20% or that's 10%, I can think about it in my head as points without telling them. Okay, this is essentially like, if it's 20% of the grade, this is worth 20 points. I could evaluate, I know how to do that. That's how I was, you know, taught. I can assign a partial credit to that. So that's, I want to honor the work that people have done, and not everybody is going. I've never had 100%, ever. And that's okay, because again, like I said, because we've never had it any other way either. So you'll see hopefully a better success rate for that. So anybody else want to, please?
In our middle school, we have an enrichment program, and just to kind of start that conversation or to kind of ease into it, we don't assign grades for our enrichment program. It's pass-fail, but instead creating a system in which they can be held accountable for steps they're learning and getting excited about that. I heard somebody was doing a yearbook class, or I do robotics, and teaching them almost creating that conversation at your school with your students, with your parents, and could be a great way to like move into it before you get to the core subject, which would be awesome in there as well. But it's a good idea of starting in a safer place, building the foundation to be able to branch out.
And you know, if we had school-wide adoption of this, what that could really look like. We could transform an entire learning community. But even you know, in the absence of that, you can transform your classroom. That's what you can, you know what I mean? And so hopefully that's what you'll leave here with, is the belief that you now have a little bit maybe more knowledge or more desire or some more, you know, motivation to get you to try something different. And so I would love for you to share with me. You can do it on the Twitters if you use Twitter, or you can send me an email or connect with me in multiple ways. But I would be remiss if I didn't have badges for you. So I have a set of 3 EdTech Team badges here. If you would, please tell me how you could use Mastery Learning in your class. And just hashtag it GAFE Summit. And you can send it to me at jheil65 as well. I would love that. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you for sort of fueling my soul to make it so easy to be away from my family, because you are all worth it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jeff. That was great.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.
Awesome. Cool. We'll share the archive to everyone as well. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye, Wendy.
That was a little freaky. I'm not gonna lie.